Thank you very much for inviting me to address the gathering. I know that you are having these short talks, so I will, in the next 10-12 minutes, I will try to tell you a little bit about the impact of climate change on health, and particularly the disproportionate impact on women and children. This is the topic that I've been working on for the last 2 years or so, ever since I came back from the WHO. And the reason that I got interested in this is because climate change is going to impact every aspect of our lives. It is already impacting every aspect of our lives in many different ways, some of which we can make a direct connection and some we cannot. And I realized that as a medical doctor, you usually spend your time in hospitals or clinics treating patients who come to you with an illness or with symptoms, they are sick. And I realized that we also need to, equally important, or even more important, is the prevention, keeping people healthy and not letting them get sick and come into the hospital. And that is something that I think we pay a lot less attention to. Especially when you are trained as a doctor, you are spending much more time on the curative side than on the preventive or health promotion side. So I basically decided that for the rest of my career, I would focus on upstream determinants of health, which are social determinants, environmental determinants like nutrition, like pollution, could be air pollution, could be other forms of pollution. And this is where climate change comes in, because climate change, through many different pathways, will have an impact on all of these determinants of health. For example, there are direct effects, and the most obvious direct effect is heat. And as you know, 2024 is the hottest year on record, ever since the world started keeping records of temperature. And over the last 10 years or so, we've had 7 years that exceeded the previous record. So it is very clear that the world is warming, and climate scientists are now predicting that we will not be able to achieve the Paris climate goals of keeping global warming under 1.5. So we are already at the point where in a few years, probably before 2030, we cross 1.5 global warming, and we'll be heading towards 2.5, 3. There are scenarios up to 8.5 degrees of warming. The IPCC has put out reports to show basically different projections and scenarios based on the actions we take, but each of those scenarios will play out a little bit differently because of impact on species. One of the most sensitive species we know are the coral reefs. We've already lost about 50 to 60% of coral reefs worldwide, and it is anticipated that we keep warming. And ocean warming is something that was recognized much later than coming on the land. Will result in the acidification of oceans because of increased CO2, higher temperature, and the killing off of coral reefs. And once you lose coral reefs, you essentially lose a whole lot of marine biodiversity. There are other ways in which heat and climate impact health of people. One is through vector-borne diseases, higher heat, higher humidity, changing patterns of climate may result in vector behavior which is different. So, for example, you have malaria being affected in higher elevation where you never saw malaria before. You have dengue, chikungunya, and these kind of diseases born spread by the Aedes mosquito that are being seen. That's actually the most fast increasing infectious disease in the world, that is dengue. And this is because the mosquito is now able to survive and thrive very well, especially in our urban environments, where we have created the conditions where mosquitoes these mosquitoes, Aedes mosquitoes, can breed very well. We also will have an impact on our health through climate impacts on plants, plant growth. It is projected that rice and wheat yields will go down by 40% even by the middle of the century if the world continues to warm. So that's going to have an impact on our nutrition. We have many species going extinct, and the speed at which species are going extinct, according to the IUCN, is about 10 times faster than it used to be in the historic. So all of these point towards significant impacts of climate change. And when we try to look at this in India, we try to collect all the information and have an analytical approach to this, both from qualitative and quantitative data and looking at case studies and so on. We found a few things. We found that women and children are disproportionately impacted. This is because of existing social and gender norms, things like women having to go further, collect water, firewood, having more difficulty in feeding their children because of perhaps lack of food, also being more prone to gender-based violence. We found a significant correlation between the occurrence of the current droughts in certain districts and the increased incidence of domestic violence. This was very, very concerning to us. We also found that many of the health indicators of women, and including things like young age of marriage or young teenage pregnancies, undernutrition, less antenatal care, all of these correlated with changing climate, particularly when there is been the current drought region. And this is true of urban and rural areas, it's true for children and women in different age groups. And we find that with migration as well, from some parts of the country to other parts, again, women have to get left behind. They need to take care of the agriculture, their farms, and they also have to take care of household children and so on. We then went on to do a study of heat impacts on women across 7 states of India, and then we confirmed that both mental and physical health and reproductive health indicators correlate with increased temperatures, and particularly in the summer months. All of this tells us, and also the correlated with socio-economic status, and of course, it was clear that the lower socio-economic groups actually face a greater degree of the impact, because higher socio-economic groups probably are able to absorb the impact of that. We classified the country into 3 types of zones: high, moderate, and low heat vulnerability index. Of course, one aspect of this is the temperature or the climate conditions, like temperature, humidity, and so on, which contributes to the heat that you feel. But the other aspects are really your own vulnerabilities, what kind of housing you have, what kind of job you have, what kind of coping capacity you have, whether you have access to health facilities, whether you have a supportive system. All of these together we created an index, which is the heat vulnerability index. And if you look at that, and you look across India, you will find that large parts of the country, so large parts of the population, particularly the poorer groups, are more vulnerable increasingly to this. This is a very serious issue, and I think it's important for people from all walks of life, and engineers. I know that probably there are large numbers of engineers and engineering students in the room. We need affordable cooling solutions for countries like India, because we are not going to be able to afford air conditioning as it exists today. We cannot hope or expect that every individual in India is going to have access to air conditioning. And yet, the weather conditions in many parts of the country will be so unbearable. People will not be able to really have a good quality of life, and most importantly, it's going to impact productivity. There are estimates that for every degree rise in temperature above 36 degrees or so, your productivity goes down by 100%. So you can imagine if we are going to be exposed to 45, 46 degrees or even 40 degrees over prolonged periods of heat stress, what is going to be the productivity of people? Therefore, this will have a direct economic impact. Then there will be whole calculations showing X percentage of GDP is going to be wiped out because of extreme heat. India is one of the countries on the front line of this, in the sense that we have large parts of the country which will experience heat. And you see, it's not one cut-off temperature. If you are used to living in a mountain area, and then you suddenly exposed to to a temperature of 35, that is a heat wave for somebody. If you're living in a coastal area, temperature of 35, the 70% humidity translates into a heat index of 45 or so. You feel like it's 45. You cannot sweat, you cannot cool your body temperature. And there is a concept of the wet bulb temperature. So the wet bulb temperature is the point at which evaporation of sweat no longer happens because there is that much water vapor in the atmosphere. So once you get to that 34 degrees or so, then you reach a wet bulb temperature. If you're exposed to that kind of temperatures over a period of time, definitely your body is going to have huge impact on the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, kidney, brain. We're also now realizing that a heat stroke is not just an acute event. You can have permanent brain damage from a heat stroke, just like you have from a stroke. So this again is going to impact the health and well-being and productivity of our population. So all in all, I think we have challenges where it's not only for the health sector or for doctors to be worried about this, it is really for all sectors, for the engineers, think about solutions, how can we make for the architects and urban planners to think about how we're going to make our cities more livable, nature-based solutions, more blue-green spaces. Research has shown that if you have more blue-green spaces in your cities, then you can bring the temperature down by 4-5 degrees. Reflective paint on the roof brings the temperature inside the house down by a couple of degrees. Our traditional building materials were probably much better. The way we used to build our houses was better for this climate than the way we build our buildings in the cities now. And then, so urban planners, architects, city designers, engineers for cooling solutions, innovations in different ways to make it easier to deal with heat, and also personal solutions, cooling helmets, cooling garments, materials. These are all things which, particularly in a work environment, in a factory setting, if you could have, you would be much more comfortable. And in addition to that, of course, things like water, especially cold water, drinking that to keep your core temperature down, taking rest breaks. So there are lots of implications for labor laws, because once temperatures cross certain degree, you have to take breaks, otherwise you're going to push your body beyond the limit. You have to drink a lot more water, and cold water helps because it keeps the core temperature down. There's a lot of research going on now in labs, in climate labs, which are subjecting healthy people, particularly the defense soldiers, and so on, to see the limits of tolerance of heat. But this is something which is going to be a reality for all of us. And so I think that large research programs, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary programs should be developed now in order to address this in a very holistic way, and also to find ways to, again, protect the vulnerable groups, perhaps through some parametric insurance programs where if they have to take off from work for a few days because of extreme heat, then it's not a question of how they are going to survive or be able to teach for those few days. So we have to also think of social safety nets which can be applied in this kind of situation. So I think with that I will stop my remarks at this point and see if there are any questions and I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful talk